Okay, Senator Surovell, we have seen this bill in several different fashions before. Yeah, we've seen this bill before. Maybe Senator Dudley has.
I wasn't aware this bill had been introduced in the Senate before.
Yes, it has.
Oh,
But we're going to give you a shot at it.
all right.
I can assure you that nobody's talked about it as much as you can. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to listen to your
Okay.
explanation.
All right, so here's how I got here. About 3 years ago, I was at a town hall meeting in my district, and they were for education, and a bunch of parents were complaining about these new electronic textbooks that the county had rolled out. And they were complaining because none of the teachers seemed to know how to use them. And all I could think about was my constituents that didn't have computers or broadband. And I was trying to figure out how, if you had an electronic textbook system, how it was you're supposed to look at electronic textbooks with a computer or broadband in your house. Nobody was bringing that up. So I made some inquiries and found out that they were in fact using these all throughout Fairfax County, and but they weren't providing computers. So I put in a bill a couple of years ago that said that you're not allowed to use an electronic textbook in a school system unless you provide a computer to every single child in the school system. You can show every kid has broadband at home. We brought up some children who came and testified about how it affects them in their school on a daily basis. And the bill was referred to JCOTS and the Broadband Commission, I think, or I forget. It was referred to two different places. Anyways, the JCOTS and the Broadband Commission created a joint subcommittee on broadband education. We convened, we had 30 people from around the state that came in. We took testimony from the textbook publishers. We took testimony from the Department of Education. We took my bill, we refined it, revised it. It was approved by the committee. It was approved by JCOTS. I introduced it, failed, brought it back again the next year in the form you see right now today. And now I haven't changed it. Just so you'll have an understanding of what we're talking about in terms of an electronic textbook. Basically, the manufacturers told us that electronic textbooks, it's not just like a Kindle where you're looking at a PDF and flipping pages. They showed us about 5 different categories of these things that range from those books, which are just like, looking at text on a page. That's the most basic. All the way up to these sort of fully interactive learning systems that some school systems are using now, where, for example, if you do your math homework, it'll give you real-time feedback as you do your homework. So if you put in an answer, it'll tell you right or wrong the second you put it in. If it sees you're having problems with a subject matter area, it'll say, click on this link and we'll give you extra homework on fractions, or click on this link to watch a tutorial video, or it has like social studies where it'll have links to outside videos you can go watch on different content about, George Washington or, World War II or whatever. It's much more interactive stuff, which is how children learn today. They learn much more electronically. They learn using computers. At least many of them do if they're lucky enough to have them. And so you can't use these devices if you don't have a device. You can't use these books if you don't have a device. I mean, whether to call them a book, but you can't use them if you don't have a computer and you don't have broadband. So basically what this bill says is that if, and only if, the system decides they want to use these electronic learning systems, it doesn't say they have to. It only says that if they do, they can't do it unless they can assure every single child in their system has a computer that they can take home. And that the school, not the home, originally the bill that JCOTS approved said every house. I just changed that to say every school has adequate broadband connectivity. And what that is defined as is bandwidth of at least 1 megabit per second per enrolled student at that school. So you have to have a pipe come into the school. It also, I originally gave a period of time, gave a little bit of time. I think it said you have till 2019. It says you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan to get a computer to every child and have that broadband by 2019, which is now 3 years away. I thought that should be pretty doable. Just so you all have an understanding. Every child has received a computer in Henrico County now for, I think, over 10 years. Generally, Henrico, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Albemarle County's been doing it for 5 years. The City of Alexandria's been doing it for every child at T.C. Williams High School for at least 5. Arlington County just rolled out computers to every child, I want to say last year. Chesterfield County just rolled out computers, tablets to every child, I think last year. The cost that I saw was about $250 per child, which is not that expensive for the equipment. It's getting cheaper every day. And the reason a lot of these systems are switching to electronic media is because it tends to be cheaper than the paper books. So these things are coming, but they're not quite here yet. They're not quite totally ubiquitous yet, but they're coming, and it's just a matter of time. Now, the other reason that that I feel so strongly about this is because of our Constitution. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the Constitution of Virginia specifically deals with this under Article 8, I think Section 11, no, Section 3, there you go. Section 3 of the Constitution, it says, compulsory education, free textbooks. The General Assembly shall provide for compulsory education, compulsory elementary and secondary education for every eligible child of the appropriate age, eligibility age to be determined by law. It shall ensure that textbooks provided at no cost, each child attending public school whose parent or guardian is financially unable to furnish them. So I think if you have an electronic textbook system and you don't provide a computer, you're violating the state constitution. And I think you're subject to lawsuit. And so my code, I think, is perfectly consistent with the Constitution, with our obligation to provide education to every child. I think it makes sense. Governor McAuliffe, by the way, I think the gentleman from Grayson knows, from our joint service in the Broadband Commission, is involved in this Education Superhighway Initiative, where we got a grant from out of state to fund broadband connections to every school in the state. And there's money out there. The federal government has announced they're spending $800 million a year to get adequate broadband in every school in the country. And I think this is something we need to do. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill?
Thank you.
In favor?
In favor? Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. We've been involved in this endeavor, going back to the town hall that Senator Surovell talked about a long time ago. Jay Kotz has been following this and supported this all along. We think it's essential for closing the achievement gap. In fact, that we're pro electronic textbook, but it's essential as a research tool. I've been teaching school for 32 years, and what was a textbook is now an electronic book. The computer is the new textbook. So we're very grateful for the work he's done. We do think it's impossible to get a job without technology and technology proficiency. This is the direction that our school is going, and Jay Kotz has headed in that direction for 6 years.
In favor?
I'm waiting for them to finish.
Okay.
Robert Jones with Virginia Education Association. This is a real problem. And if you think about it, you're giving the electronic textbooks to some students, but some of your students don't have access to it at home. And can you imagine that with a fiscal report? You'd say to students, here, you can take yours home, but you can't. I mean, it's not a level playing field. And it's one more thing for kids in poverty. I'm chairman of the Housing Commission in Richmond. We've got 20,000 families in the projects in Richmond. As of late, I talk to the children, I ask them if they have any internet access at home. They don't. And so it is a real problem, and we're going to have to come to grips with it. It's a tough can to skin, though, but I think we do need to be given serious consideration.
Anyone else in favor of the bill? All right, opposition?
Mr. Chairman, Stacey Haney, the School Board Association. We've got some concerns with this. I agree with the earlier speakers that it's a problem if you have students, some of whom have access to the electronic textbook and some of whom don't. But I think this bill goes a bit too far. One of the things I want to point out is that this bill requires that if a school system chooses to use electronic textbooks, then they must give a device to every child. Well, what some school systems do, like Chesterfield, that's where my children attend school, they give devices to high school and I believe middle school. My students are in elementary school, so I know high school and I believe middle school, but not to elementary school students. But this bill wouldn't allow for that differentiation. This bill, it's all or nothing. $250 per child, that does sound quite reasonable. However, there are approximately 1.2 million school children public school children in Virginia, multiply that, today's my day for the calculator, multiply that by $250, and that's $300 million to buy devices for students. So it's, and the way the bill is currently drafted, that would be an expense borne entirely by the localities, and so we would
There is a
have an issue.
3-year implementation. No school board shall make electronic textbooks available for use of students unless the school board adopts a plan to ensure that on before July 1, 2019. So we have a 3-year window there, from my understanding.
I still don't think that's gonna help us with, well, I mean, school boards don't have the capability to put money in the bank and save it. If we don't spend it, it reverts back to the locality. But in any event, it's still a significant cost and really a concern for those school systems. I mean, it would mean that the school systems that now are using electronic textbooks, say at the high school level, they don't have the money to give devices to every student, and they're gonna have to stop using them at the high school level, and I don't think we wanna go in that direction either, so.
School boards do have prioritize how they spend it.
Yes, but this bill doesn't, the way it's drafted, doesn't allow you to prioritize. It'd be all or nothing. And I'm not sure that that's where really anybody's trying to go, but that's what the way it's drafted.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to get back to the implementation of it. The policy piece is something that's very hard to argue because this is the future and people need to, we need to move towards that. How you get to that, and whether it's 300 million or whatever, this needs to be a partnership. If the state is going to say go do this, then it's going to be important for the state to say, rather than go find the 300 million over however many years, then we're going to help you with that. Now, we've done this before, and we feel that it should be a budget issue down the road. If you'll remember, and being around these tables for as long as I have, and Rob probably remembers, we were able at one point to use VPSA grant monies to buy computers when they were supposed to be important for secondary schools and elementary schools. The state provided VPSA monies for that. That's not part of this bill. That's a budget issue. That's something that the state decided that needed to be done, and they in partnership worked with localities to make it happen. For us, that's the pathway to this, rather than to say you have 3 years to determine how you're going to raise $300 million to implement this.
Senator Donovan.
Couple of questions. Does this say that it will provide a computer for every child? I believe it says it will make sure that every child has access to one at home. Does this say that the school system will buy a computer for every child? I don't see that in here. Am I misreading it?
No, it says the system has to have a plan to ensure each child has actual access at school and in his residence to at least one computing device not shared with another student.
So basically, that's every
Not
child
shared
gets,
with another student.
not shared with another student at school and at home.
Doesn't mean that they can't utilize the ones they already have.
Correct.
Doesn't mean they have to buy. Mr. Chairman?
Senator Donovan.
So, would not so this is permissive, the school system doesn't have to go to electronic.
Right.
And furthermore, there is a budget that already exists for purchasing of hardbound books that would be transitioned to the purchase of electronic books, so the entire cost would not be assumed in a vacuum. There would be applied cost savings from not purchasing hardcover textbooks,
Right.
correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes. I don't rise in opposition to the bill, but as a bit of historical context, again, Gordon Miller from G3. When Delegate Chris Peace in his freshman year worked with the JCOPS committee to bring the electronic textbook opportunity sort of to fruition, it was disallowed previously. And I was fortunate enough to work with him on the initial legislation, which has now evolved considerably since that time. But Senator, you're exactly right. There's $128 million a year in regular textbook costs that we buy from Texas and California. The proposal that Delegate Peace and I worked on suggested that if we were to spend even $28 million a year on electronic textbooks, and save $100 million a year over 10 years, we'd save $1 billion. And if you look at the cost of the $300 million worth of devices that we just talked about, over the 5-year life of the device, it's about $60 million. So if you look at the $100 million minus the $60 million, we're still saving $40 million, or $400 million over a long period of time. So it's a matter of how you apply the pool of money that's used in order to be able to do that. At the time that we addressed some of these same issues, Henrico County, for instance, made universal access available through high-speed computers and computers at the libraries. So for those children who did not have the benefit of high-speed connectivity at home and did not have a device of their own, the libraries made those available, and those resources, I mean, it's not ideal, but at that time, we did not have the level of connectivity that we do now, and this is several years ago. So now with the advent of mobile technology and things like that, it's evolved considerably. You know, certainly I think the only thing I think is bad about investing $300 million in devices is that you need to throw those away every 5 years and buy 300 million more. And so it's unfortunate, but until we have a lower cost, higher availability access to information through mobile, I think you're going to find that it's something like that is inevitable. But I certainly applaud the Senator for the desire to have universal access. And that's something that we've seen. My kids are in Henrico County Public Schools. I have 3 of them. And I would say 90% or more of the time that they spend with these electronic textbooks are spent in the classroom. And the schools should definitely be wired. And if there's not adequate connectivity at the schools, then I definitely would support making sure the schools have adequate connectivity and local networking resources and wireless resources, et cetera. So that's certainly very much worth the investment. But I applaud the committee for their taking up this issue, and I know it's a balancing act, but the Senator is quite right. There are various funds with different labels on them that as we transition to a new frontier in education, there are ways to redistribute those funds without the fiscal impact that you might otherwise take. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Michael Malloy, Fairfax County School. I actually just wanted to provide one point of clarification about the financial side. There is money for textbooks that's available, and one thing that we are finding is that electronic textbooks are not that much less expensive than actual textbooks, that the expense is tended to be about the same. Remember, in this proposal, it's not simply a matter of purchasing textbooks, it's also a matter of purchasing devices. So you have 2 expenses that are involved with this as opposed to just a single expense of purchasing a paper textbook.
So, if I may, so the reason they're more expensive is because the original guidance that was provided to the committee was not heeded, that the Virginia needs to begin investing in your own content, not leasing content from publishers that only want to hold the state rent at gunpoint to extract the exact same amount of money. You're exactly right. If you're going to ask a textbook publisher to help you solve the problem, they're going to charge you the exact same thing for a digital textbook that they charge you for a paper textbook. That's not the answer. It's about time we invest in a library of our own core technology, our own educational materials that we manage and control that is well beyond the reach of current publishers, and that scares them to death.
Any further questions? All right, Senator Dunlap.
And I just want to make sure that as we look at the bill, I'm a little bit concerned about the K through 12. And, what if the school system buys electronic textbooks for the high school? I'm a little bit worried about the wording.
Staff has a proposed amendment. I scribbled one too, but this is probably cleaner than mine, about limiting it to the grades in which electronic textbooks are used, or the students that are expected to use those books.
Okay.
Does it say K? Or does it say 6?
It says, I misread it, it said 612, you're correct.
They're actually using them in Fairfax County in 3rd grade.
Mr. Chair, on line 52, after each student insert expected to use such electronic textbooks. So each student expected to use such electronic textbooks in the local school division will have actual access.
All right. Is there it's been moved and it's in a second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Any further comments from those in the audience?
I
Okay.
can chime in as a mom of a dyslexic student. This is a great way to reach the dyslexic population in a different format. My son does everything with audio textbooks. And all of the technology with Google apps, and used to be you had to buy drag and dictate for your dyslexic students, which was very costly and not accessible to the general population. But the technology through Microsoft and what have you, Apple, is very user friendly. It's already built in, text to speech and what have you. So if you open this up to the entire student population, it is one way to throw a life preserver to those dyslexic kids.
One final point. You talked about textbook monies, and I understand that cost and what you're talking about, but the connectivity to the building and within inside the building, we cannot use textbooks monies for. And so that is going to have to be capital costs that school divisions are going to have to buy. Again, I'm not saying that down the road that's not something that we need to look at, but we need some funds to do it with, however that's provided.
How many school divisions do you have that doesn't have?
That I don't know, I can tell you.
Did I misunderstand that there are federal grants to ensure that there is broadband at every school?
And there's also private entities that are working to try to connect all these schools.
Yeah, and there's been a couple different issues out there. One is, Jonathan Grayson, Mr. Chairman knows that schools around the state were paying radically different rates for broadband, and thanks to the grant I think Governor McAuliffe got, we're trying to get everybody paying the lowest rates possible instead of some of these crazy rates that are trying to free up more money. But yeah, the federal government has announced they're making $800 million available nationally a year to get broadband to the schools, and so there's money out there. I'm just not sure whether the state is systematically going after it like that.
And I think that's part of my point. I'm not arguing the policy piece here. What I'm arguing is that school systems, small ones such as in your area, Senator, are going to need help in going out and getting the money and then following through with it. That's what I think we need to do is as a statewide initiative, whether it's part of this bill or some other bill, to move forward with that. It's been a part of the Superintendent's Association's initiatives for the past couple of years to try to improve connectivity, particularly in the more underserved areas. I'm just concerned that we put a time frame and a obligation upon local school divisions to come forth with that without any assistance from the state.
All right, we've heard Senator Howe.
I think I've been here too long, but I remember the same arguments against free textbooks. And we finally had to put it in the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, hold on a second.
Senator Dunbar.
This is permissive. We're not mandating that all of the school systems provide electronic books. We're only saying if they choose to provide electronic books, if they ensure that kids can.
If they can. If they can't provide any, if they don't provide all.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 740. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No.
Good. First time.
I just don't have a vote here, so I have to abstain. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, that completes the subcommittee's docket, and